right, we are live. Good evening, everyone. Welcome to a special late night West Coast edition of Civil War Seattle live stream. Tonight, I'm really happy to be joined by my friend Bruce Smith to talk about his website, Civil War Veterans Buried in Washington State. We'll talk about the website. We'll talk about the background of it, how we got started on it, and what Bruce and his co-founder Karen would like to get from this website going forward, and what you guys can hopefully maybe do to get involved as well. So let me just get a start here by letting Bruce introduce himself. Tell us a little bit about you, where you live. You're here in the Seattle area as well, just as I am, and then after you give us a little introduction, then we'll just jump right in. And anybody who's watching, before we get any further, we are live, so you can leave questions and comments on whatever platform you're watching from, and Bruce and I can answer those questions live as we go through here. So just tell us where you're watching from, or anything you want to hear further about that we talk about as we go. So, all right, Bruce, so who the heck are you?
Well, Robert Bruce Smith was born in 1946. I live in Woodinville, retired from the King County Juvenile Court, started reenacting Civil War in 1998, and started the research project that became this website probably 2002.
Okay. So your interest in the Civil War, though, must predate, of course, the reenacting days. I know it does for me. I started reenacting about the same time you did in the late 90s. As a lot of people did at that point, but I had been interested in this since as early as I can remember. I mean, as a young child. So you grew up in this area in Washington, Western Washington.
I grew up in Eastern Washington.
Eastern Washington. But, so how did you wind up getting the bug for that interest that led you into reenacting and research?
A cousin of mine, who is now deceased, had a copy of the 1952 Civil War classic comic book, Red Badge of Courage, that I saw, and I was just smitten with the uniform, with the stories. So when I went to the carnivals in Wenatchee, you could buy, I grew up in Wenatchee, Washington, you could buy these Civil War hats and keppies, and yeah, I started there. During this Civil War centennial, I bought many books post Civil War by authors from that era. In fact, on the day that at the time President John F. Kennedy was killed, I was sitting in a study hall at my high school reading Battles and Leaders of the Civil War, and that I'd checked out of the Wenatchee Library. I've since bought my own copies of that, and I wrote wrote on the page, the president has just been killed. And then I thought, well, I can't disgrace a book. I got to erase that. So that's how far back I go. And And
do you have memories of was there anything like other than newspaper articles and things that commemorated the centennial in a place like Wenatchee or here in Washington?
No, there was nothing.
Really?
Town,
no.
It was on a national level.
Okay.
And about that time, I started subscribing to a magazine called Civil War Times. That later came back as Civil War Times Illustrated, and then has since gone back to Civil War Times. I've been a subscriber off and on. I don't even know if it still exists. So,
it does, in fact, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. My father in Florida at some benefit sale or something, he just found for not much money a whole bound set of the first 30 years of that magazine. And they're in bound volumes, and it's really cool stuff to have. So I can imagine reading that as a kid.
Do you want them? I've got them all bound.
No, I'll get my dad's set eventually. That'll be enough. So let's fast forward a little bit. So you have an interest in that going from childhood through most of your adult life, and like a lot of us, The movie Gettysburg comes out in 1993. The Ken Burns series, of course, fuels interest in the American Civil War everywhere. So I think maybe Bruce, Peggy just commented that she's having a little tough time hearing you. Maybe sit a little closer to the screen. And Peggy, tell us if this is a little better. Make sure you're getting.
You didn't tell me there was a Peggy. Peggy was my mother's name.
That's a little better, I think. Peggy, how's that? Give me a thumbs up or something in the comments. Yeah, that's better. There we go. So when you got, the bug and there was that surge and like I said, all this reenacting really peaked at that point in the late 90s and these kind of things. Okay, it's a little better. I think that's probably about as good as we're gonna get here. So
look any better.
Well, we can hear you as good as we're gonna get. That is better though. So now reenacting is its own thing, but then you started looking and compiling and thinking about the Civil War connections here locally, which is a process and a journey that I've undergone with my work. So I'm kind of curious how you made that transition from, reading Battles and Leaders of the Civil War to starting to look around you here locally. Like I know a lot of this, when it comes to the website, will begin in Snohomish. And was that the first place you really started looking at the local veterans, or how did you get into looking here in Washington?
It was definitely Snohomish.
Okay.
I have a cousin that still lives just north of the cemetery there, and I remember going out there, my wife and us, for a family get together, and in the semi-darkness, I saw this statue. It was like, oh my God, that's an incredible. And so from there, I met the guy that runs the cemetery. I assume he's still there. I don't know. And was out there one day kind of just looking around, and there was a headstone that was totally busted and broken and on the ground. And I thought, that's really terrible. And so I took the headstone home and spent a year reconstructing it.
And if this is a veteran's headstone, does the government issue one? Or?
Well, no, it wasn't. It was.
Oh, it wasn't.
Folsom. It was a civilian headstone.
Oh, okay, okay.
GAR on it.
Yeah, okay.
So I had to take it. I took it home and I started reconstructing it and putting it back together. And then, according to Karen, it was in 2002 that we had the dedication of that headstone. And
okay.
That's where I met her, and she had all this information about the veterans of buried there and
in the Snohomish Grand Army Cemetery. Yeah. So when you repaired that headstone, you were just thinking about that headstone? You weren't really looking into the researching anything else at that point. You just wanted to fix that headstone.
That's correct.
Okay.
But then the dedication day, I was introduced to Karen, who had all this information on Civil War veterans buried in Snohomish County. She'd grown up in Monroe, and so we went on to do all the bios of veterans buried in Snohomish, and then we had a partner who's now deceased, Jim Shipman, who had worked a long time in Marysville and Everett, and we moved on from there, and now we're kind of just expanding out to the rest of the state.
Yeah.
To get this information into one spot.
Sure. Well, let me just, we were hoping to have Karen, your co-founder, join us. That wasn't able to work out tonight, but maybe you can give us a little bit of just a little bit, as much as you can do justice to her, of how she came into that line of research as well. Because she doesn't have the Civil War buff disorder that we have. She's from my understand, but comes from a genealogy background, and that's what she liked doing. Yeah. So do you know how she got connected with that side of things?
No, but as we communicated the other day, she and I, that she was kind of, I forget, I shouldn't say the name. She was like the obit person of Snohomish County.
Hmm.
I really can't put the details on that, but her research, she was doing research long before I was doing it,
Hmm.
and her research now, even now, is very thorough.
Hmm. And so you guys met, and looks like Tammy's also commenting that she's still having a little trouble hearing you too. So maybe we got to extra sit in close there and
God,
see what we can do about that. Uh,
okay.
let's see. How's that? Is that better, guys? That's about as close as we're going to get without going directly up Bruce's nose with the
You
camera.
can do that too.
But we can try that if if you guys can hear better. We'll do what we need to do. But I do think sitting as close as we can probably helps a little bit, as much as we can do. Laptops all have different quality mics and that sort of stuff, so we're doing the best we can.
I've never done this before,
So
this is new.
all right, so now let's go back to Snohomish. So a little background for those who maybe are not from this area or haven't been to Snohomish. Snohomish is what, 30 miles northeast of Seattle, roughly northeast, and they have a large Grand Army of the Republic cemetery. This cemetery is not exclusively Grand Army of the Republic. It does carry that name. There are lots of veterans buried there. How many are total in that cemetery, Bruce?
I
150?
150.
Yeah, okay. So there's a significant amount, and they really are kind of focused in one section of the cemetery. And in that cemetery, the monument that Bruce...
No, they're not. They are.
Well, they are kind of, yeah, they're not like the Grand Army in Seattle, but there's a historic section and then a non-historic section of the cemetery, I guess, where there's more modern
And the
burials.
final guy that died in Snohomish is buried there is in the non section.
Oh, he is, okay. So
they kept.
well, I stand corrected. They are scattered about all through the cemetery.
Yeah.
I think that's a better way to state it. But crowning at the top of the little hill, the rise that the cemetery sits on is a beautiful monument. It's the largest monument in Washington for the Civil War. It's a large obelisk with a classic figure of an infantryman holding a rifle. It's something you'd expect to see in a village square in Vermont or something, yeah, or in Virginia or wherever. It's not typical of the monuments of this area, and it really stands out, and it does catch your eye when you go there. So,
and I saw that the night driving to my cousin's place, silhouetted against the semi-night sky, and I was like, oh my God, what is this?
Yeah, it catches your eye, and it makes you think like, wow, what's this doing here? And that's what kind of kicks open the door to looking at who are these veterans. So when you and Karen connect, and you guys are starting to put your information together, and you're thinking publicly with this information, you have it. You're involved in reenacting, which is a very public-facing history activity. You're interacting. It's not about just researching and accumulating. It's about presentation at this point. So, how did you guys come up with the concept to make a website and to decide that this is what we want to do? We've got this information. We're both passionate about this thing. We're going to combine forces because we have different skill sets here. When did you think a website? That's what we should do instead of a book or something else?
Without Karen being here, I can't answer that, but it was early or mid 2000s when we first did the bios. The only time they were displayed was on placards that were put out at the GER cemetery during a ceremony we called Honoring Their Memory, which was the first Saturday before April 9th of every year. And then we decided, well, we need to put this someplace else besides just on these placards. And
Yeah.
we started checking with website people, and we kind of went through one or two bad runs before we found some people that did some designing for us. And
Yeah.
so that's where it came from. And then
And you started off with Snohomish because that was where you had the most complete.
That's as far as we intended to go. And
Really? Okay.
When Jim Shipman joined us, he had worked, as I said, at Evergreen Cemetery, and he was a big Civil War buff. He's buried there now. and at Marysville, and he had a bunch of information. So we moved
Okay.
from Snohomish to Evergreen and Marysville, and
Yeah.
Karen was kind of is from Snohomish County. So then, after GAR and Snohomish, it was like, okay, we're going to do Snohomish County.
Mhm.
And then people said, well, here's a vet buried over here. Will you do this? Will you do that?
Yeah.
Uh, that's kind of how it grew.
Yeah. Sure. Well, for context for people too, Bruce and I are familiar with these numbers, but some of you guys viewing may not be. The rough estimate of veterans that are buried in this state is somewhere above 14,000.
That's
I've
even
seen
higher
that
than
in
I knew.
Yeah, I've seen that in period sources that refer to the amount of veterans that are living here. And then another person that I'm familiar with their genealogical work said that they think that there might be a number closer to that. That seems a little high to me for how many are actually in the ground buried in our cemeteries. But nonetheless, even if it's as low as 10,000, we had just talked about the one cemetery at 150, and every historical cemetery in Western Washington has that kind of number. Here in King County, there was little in excess, I think, my research and estimates of about 3,500 veterans that lived here in Seattle and King County. About half of those are actually buried in King County cemeteries. So the scope of this work, when you start to come out of even Snohomish County, and all of a sudden you're like, I'm going to do all of them in the state, and then you realize, oh man, there's a lot. So how did that progress? Did you ever think maybe we should have just said veterans buried in Snohomish County and kept it at that, or did you really think that we can charge ahead and we can get everybody in here?
I actually thought we should stop at Evergreen and go through. But it was like, no, there's more. There's Marysville. And as we went on and I'd read other things, it was like, okay, there's this story, there's that story. Yeah, let's just expand. I mean,
Yeah.
no, we do birth to death. I do birth to death bios on the veteran. I'll never do all of them. If there's,
Mhm.
I figured it was 10 to 12,000, and you
Yeah.
had a different number. But what we're trying to do now is at least put in everybody's name and their unit in their cemetery.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
even you have helped with there's names you've come up with that we didn't. Whoops, what happened?
Oh, we're okay. Maybe your headphones are unplugged.
No, no, I can hear you. I just can't see you. What did I hit?
Oh,
Did I hit
I don't
something?
know. We can still see you fine though, so we'll continue on.
Okay,
You're unchanged,
okay.
so uh, I guess you'll have to fly blind to hear a little bit,
Oh, that's fine.
but yeah, we can still hear and see
Oh,
you,
there
so
we
we're
go. I
going
got you
okay.
back. I
Okay.
got you back.
Um, yeah, and it's so yeah that collaborative aspect is really the only way you can progress on a project of that scale, unless you have interns doing a research project or something for college or something like that. I don't know how you could uh, possibly do that level that you had intended in the beginning. So I think it's good that you've just pivoted towards just getting everybody listed as much as you
Other
can.
people have done research. Denise Adamson.
Mhm.
They we're just now we're trying to, and a guy named Fred Flugrath, who was in Eastern Washington. He did.
Yeah, I've
He's
heard the
kind of the
name.
Eastern Washington guy,
Okay.
and all his material went to the museum in Wenatchee, and
Okay.
we're still trying to figure out how to access that without having to
Yeah.
pay for it. But
Yeah.
the whole idea is just to get the information out there.
Yeah.
Now, changing the focus a little bit, one of the things that a GAR cemetery, which is essentially a Union cemetery,
Hmm.
Snohomish. Somebody came up to me for about 17 years. We did a ceremony there called "Honoring Your Memory," uh, and we put out all the placards by the grave sites, and we had the reenactors there, and blah blah blah. Actually, we finally started having some kind of a mini reenactment. But somebody came up to me one time and said, "You know, I've heard there's a Confederate buried here, and in a GAR cemetery."
Mm.
Well, I went and talked to the cemetery, Biff, the cemetery guy, he said, no, there's no Confederates buried here. Well, with Karen's research, we found at least three, and we got them headstones, and there's probably a couple others that we just haven't quite pinned
Mhm.
down yet. But with the internet now, which wasn't around 20 some years ago, there's information out there that we never knew
Yeah.
about.
Yeah, this is
There
really
are there are
the golden age for genealogy.
there are Confederates buried in the
Yeah.
GAR cemetery.
Well, that's interesting because in the Seattle GR Cemetery, there are not. Um, but one thing that's a little different about the Seattle one is that plot is so well defined. It's not, there's no intermixed of privately purchased grave sites and the veterans. But in Snohomish, there are, like you had just explained it, they're scattered everywhere. But it's a testament too to the relationships between the Union and Confederate veterans here in Washington as well. I think that some of them are actually buried there alongside them because that's a dynamic that doesn't exist in a lot of places. It does here, and I think it gives you a little opportunity to look at that aspect of things too, instead of just saying, well, what, there's Confederates here, that can't be. And well, they were, and these guys were the pioneers of this town together, and they had businesses together and this sort of stuff, and their families wind up connected and intermarried. And so it's not a surprise to me that there are in fact Confederates there, even though it's named Grand Army Cemetery.
The surprise to me is that if we found 3, 4, 5 veterans, Confederates buried in GAR and Snohomish,
Mhm.
there was only 1 or 2 in Evergreen and Everett. Now that cemetery is 50 times the size.
Yeah.
And there's only one, I think, that has a headstone. The numbers, statistically, it doesn't add up. They are there. And what happened, particularly with Confederates, is that most of them came out here, they changed the spelling of their names, they changed their names. They didn't want anything to do with the Confederacy. So they are out there. The fact that there are, to my knowledge, only 100 and some designated Confederate veterans buried in this state is really statistically off base.
Yeah, it's interesting. I have in my research, I have about 130, just under that lived in King County. Most of them, or a lot of them, are buried here, but there's a significant amount that aren't. But somebody talked to me who's a historian on Civil War veterans in Montana. And the ratio of Confederate to Union soldiers is much higher in Idaho and Montana. So I think it's a little bit of the chronology of how they arrived here. That there really are just that many fewer members.
But they are here.
But they're here, yeah. And
We
but
just don't know how to find them. If you ever look
Yeah.
at an obituary in a newspaper that says Civil War veteran and it doesn't say Union, you can guess that it's a
Yeah.
Confederate.
well, I will make a little.
Served under a different name, a different spelling of their name.
So while we're speaking of Confederates, then let me pull up a screenshot here of your website so people can see what we're talking about here.
We're
So
for this.
this is the homepage as it exists currently. Unfortunately, I grabbed it in the middle of the slideshow, which is just a moldy gravestone thing here. But you can see across the top the name of the website, Civil War Veterans Buried in Washington State. If you Google Civil War in Seattle or Civil War in Washington, you're either going to get my website or Bruce's website. So 50-50 chance. But this one, if you're trying to find somebody, and I've used this website too. I'm certainly appreciative of it as a resource, because when you're in a cemetery and you can open on your phone a Find a Grave or some of these genealogy websites, they don't tell you who these Civil War veterans are. You have to look up a name and guess a date of birth or something. But if you're looking for an ancestor, or if you're looking for a particular cemetery, or you're looking for a particular soldier, there's all these search options at the top here. It says cemeteries, find a veteran, so on. So it's really targeted and it's specific towards the veterans themselves. So this next screenshot that you can see is the find a veteran search menu. You can see first and last name, but look at all the options that Bruce and Karen have given us. Union or Confederate, you can search by all the Confederate veterans that they found in the state and included in this database, or you can combine some of these search terms, right? We can do Confederate in King County, and then see, or in a certain cemetery and see. So when you're in the field and you're in a cemetery or something, this website is tremendous because it can get you the answer you want really quick. And as it expands out, it's going to be more and more useful. But if you're in the Seattle area, in Western Washington, this is a really great go-to thing to have on your phone, to have on your computer, to if you certain names that you want to look up or you're curious about. And it's very, very user friendly. And so you said that there's some things you guys want to do still with.
Well, I don't think it's quite as user friendly as it should be, and I'm working
okay.
with the designer people on that, even as we speak.
Okay.
So, yeah, I don't think it is user friendly as it could be and should
Yeah.
be.
Well, I think it's great as it is, and if it can improve, all the better.
And if anybody has some suggestions of how to do it, we'd love to hear from you.
Sure. And
I just contacted the website people today and said, you know what? No, we're going to have an about us sort of thing about bios of myself and who's ever helping us.
Yeah.
But also, as just today, I said, you know what we need is just a page where if people email us, we can post those emails and just have them there.
Sure.
What people are looking for and what they like and what they don't like.
Yeah.
So this is an ongoing.
Yeah.
As we
James Adams, he's watching from over on the peninsula. His ancestors buried in Port Orchard at the Retzel Soldier Home. That's a good segue for me. His great grandfather is Lieutenant Milton Schock, who's buried at the Retzel Soldiers Home. I've seen his name; he's in my notebooks. I don't know if you guys have done Retzel Cemetery yet or not.
Some, not all. I mean, that's
so here's
where we are.
Here's a great segue because I get occasionally, I used to get more, but I still get them of people inquiring and, oh man, Civil War Seattle, that sounds really great. What can I do to help you out with some research? I love digging into Civil War history stuff. And I'm kind of like, this is my history work as a historian and a writer and whatever. It's kind of a one-man band. However, Civil War veterans in Washington State, Bruce and Karen, could use all hands on deck as possible with going through a cemetery like Retzel, which has, I think, 450 or so Civil War veterans. Ording Soldiers Home in Pierce County has 990 or something like that. There's multiple cemeteries in Tacoma that have several hundred, 200 or 300 in each cemetery, I believe. And so if you're watching and you want to get involved and you enjoy doing that kind of stuff, go through the website, contact Bruce and Karen, and get involved. I think that's the way that this project can push forward.
If you want to write a bio, do it.
Yeah. So Peggy here, she just said she's looking at the website. She didn't locate her ancestor, but she was able to send you a message. And she seems like in Eastern Washington. So that's just it. That's what he was talking about a page that you can network with people through. I've got my great-grandfather. He doesn't have a grave marker. How are we going to find him? Well, you got to tell Bruce and Karen they can put it on the website or they can get in touch with people, that kind of stuff. So
if they don't have a grave marker, they can probably get one although that's been shut down quite a bit. That was Karen's expertise.
Yeah. Well, it's getting easier. We got one last year for veteran here in Seattle. So they've released they've broken the seal on that a little bit. So you can it takes a long time, longer than it used to, but you can still get them now. And people contact me about that sometimes too. And I'm not the guy really to come to, but I can kind of guide people a little bit. But if Karen's got lots of experience and that's then again, this website can be a really good resource for that. So So I guess when we get done with this and you get back to your email, you'll probably have one from Peggy Mundy from watching this tonight. So yeah, that's really the thing. And man, this area between what you guys have done and Carolyn Farnham with her work on Find a Grave. Oh my God, she's put tens of thousands of listings on Find a Grave, and it's all volunteer work. So when you're in a cemetery and you want to get some information and you pull up Find a Grave, you're going to get something from Karen, who is Bruce's partner, from Carolyn Farnham, or Denise Audison, who is another person who's done an enormous amount of genealogical work on the Civil War veterans, locating and confirming their locations in cemeteries, that kind of stuff. So those three names you will see a lot of. I am incredibly thankful to be able to access the work that they've done, so I don't have to go into cemetery records to find the people I want to make content about. I can write about a guy because he's identified, and I can get it through these websites. So it really is a wonderful foundation for research in this area. And there's not, when you look at Find a Graves in other places, they don't have the level of thoroughness that we have in this region. So what you guys have done is pretty remarkable and unique to Western Washington. So I do want to make sure everybody gets, their credit and thanks as much as possible for being parts of this puzzle. And hopefully your site it helps consolidate that for someone who's looking for one-stop shopping to get this information.
As far as I was concerned, as a reenactor, as a historian, it was like there's information here, there's information there. There's no one place, and people seem to keep reinventing the wheel in terms of getting. Oh, there's somebody buried. Well, yeah, we know that, but why are people spinning their wheels, just doing the same thing over and over again?
Yeah.
Hey, here's this person. Maybe somebody can come up with something different and add to it instead of trying just to find the person.
Yeah.
Now that's kind of where we are, and what
we're
about.
Yeah. Well, that's good, and I like to emphasize that the message, the overarching message here is that this website is a established resource, a developing resource, but it's a resource for everybody. And if you can participate and you can get involved, whether it's just looking up names and sending them to Karen to upload into the website, or adding to the stories that they have on there, photos, that kind of stuff of these veterans, please do it, because we're doing it for those guys anyway. That's really the point, is the history of the veterans themselves.
As an aside there, I got an email this week from a guy on a vet. He said, wow, this is an incredible bunch of information you have here, but they lived on, what was it, Bainbridge Island, not Whidbey Island. Okay, that's cool. I mean, that kind of stuff. We don't have a magic wand that gives us everything. And now, really, the National Archives have not been accessible in the past 2 years. That's really been a big shutdown, and Karen has done amazing work finding other sources.
Sure.
I'm impressed.
Yeah. Well, let me address 3 separate comments here really quick. Questions and comments. So James Adams, you mentioned that there's a Washington State website where your great-grandfather's application to the Retzel Soldiers Home can be found. So that you can do through the Washington Department of State website, or a website called Family Search, which is free and you have to sign up. I can pull those in 30 seconds because it's all bookmarked on my computer. So send me a private message through my Facebook page, and I'll send you that 24-page file as a PDF. I can get that in a second. I'm very familiar with where those records are. Matt McCauley, who is over in Kirkland, he's at the Kirkland Heritage Society, does cemetery tours there, a great advocate, and he listens to me when I need to complain about stuff like today. I'm glad you're watching. And he says, thank you, Bruce and Karen, for what you guys have done. That, he's benefited from your site's info on Dennis Bicknell in the Kirkland Cemetery. And lastly is Cynthia Wilson. So you guys, she said that she's been looking up the black soldiers on the website and hasn't really had any luck finding them. So Cynthia Wilson, her entire focus of her research is Washington State's black Civil War soldiers. She's been at this for a long time and has incredibly thorough information on them. You guys need to connect. So Cynthia, I think you and Bruce, you guys need to email and get on the same team here, because Cynthia has gotten headstones for numerous green fields in Mount Pleasant Cemetery, several others that she knows about up there, in identifying Black soldiers who are very, very difficult to identify otherwise. So you guys can very much benefit from connecting and sharing that labor together. So Cynthia, please do that if you can, and then contribute that tremendous amount of work that you've done to that. If you'd like to be involved, you'd be the perfect candidate for participating. So that was great. I'm really glad we got those 3 comments and questions here at the end. So I think we're getting pretty late here, especially for those watching further to the east that are up past their bedtime. We got a lot of local people watching. Usually I get a lot of East Coast people watching because we start at 7 and we have historians on that are talking about their books and that kind of stuff. But since we had a late start tonight, we're getting our Seattle crowd a little bit more involved. So if anybody, like I said, you want to get involved, you have information or questions or whatever, just get a hold of Bruce through the website. I'll pull up the homepage here again so you can see the front page if you're tuning in late or you're not sure what the website is. Civil War Veterans in Washington State. What's the actual URL? Is it Civil War Vets WA State, I think. Yeah, but if you just put this website address, you'll find it. There's no question. And it comes up, it's kind of integrated into Google, so you can actually search a little bit through Google directly, I think. That's beyond my technical abilities, so I don't know how that works. But it's there. And anybody watching tonight, if you're a fan of what I do with Civil War Seattle and talking about getting into all these stories and histories and stuff, this is a great place to get different information. Peggy put the link in the comments. So if you're watching, go down there. She just posted the link in the comments so you can directly click on it. What was I going to say? And you want to get beyond what I do, because I am very myopic. Civil War veterans in Seattle and King County, that's all I can handle. I can't address people in Snohomish County or Whatcom County or Tacoma or Eastern Washington, but their website is more encompassing like that. So trying to be. And so if you want to get more into those things or help out with that statewide mission to compile all this information, this is definitely the site for a different look at things than I do. So anybody's got any more questions for Bruce that I could pull up here? We're kind of winding down a little bit. It's 10 after 9 here already. So, but I really do hope you and Cynthia can connect, because I think you guys really have a lot to offer one another in that regard, and get involved in that. Anybody, yeah. But I feel like you guys are kind of operating pretty parallel here. She's been at it for much longer than me, so I feel like I'd love to get you guys connected. That would be awesome. And then also, Cynthia, I still want to invite you to come on, just like Bruce is here, and talk about your work and talk about your work on the Black soldiers statewide. She's not just Seattle either, so she'll have things in other sections of the state, and then you can tell us about that as well. So, yeah. So, all right. Well, Bruce, do you have any other funny stories or a good sales pitch or anything you want to wrap up with? Or
no. Thank you for the platform here, and any input that people want to give, hey, we'll accept it. I mean, we're not out to make a buck. This is not a profit thing. It's a labor of love on all.
Absolutely.
Participate.
And
let's get the information out there. Hopefully, in one spot instead of here, there, and everywhere.
Yeah, exactly. And it'll serve the next generation of people looking for this information well. And I think that's the best legacy any of us can leave behind with our work, whether it's in genealogy or history or public history or reenacting or whatever. It's just to pass this stuff on it's fun to research it and it's fun to collect it. But if you just sit on it in your office and you don't do anything with it, it doesn't do anything to honor the soldiers and their service and sacrifice and what they did. And so, this is a really good opportunity for us to share platforms and make awareness of what one another are working on. And so thank you. And thanks everybody for go ahead.
Rich, I have to ask now, what email address do you have for people on me? Because we moved a couple of years ago, and basically my Civil War email address was Comcast. And when we moved a mile from where we'd been for 43 years, there's no Comcast here.
Okay.
It's a People PC, the People PC email, if that's there on the site.
Okay.
That's the best.
Well, I think your site should have a contact page. And if not, if you guys want to reach out
we do have a contact
through the contact thing, you'll either get Bruce or Karen through the website. If not, I don't have it directly in front of me, but you can contact me and I can get you to Bruce or Karen or whoever. I'll help facilitate any contact for anybody between these websites too. So if you do hit a dead end, just through Facebook or my email, my website, and I'll get you to Bruce.
We're not dead yet.
Yeah. So, okay. Well, I want to thanks everybody for staying up late and watching us, staying up past your bedtimes on the East Coast. And I want to thank you, Bruce, for coming on and sharing your story about this website. And I'm glad we could, expose it to at least those of my audience that want to watch and do my part to help get this thing going. And like I said, anybody that's watching this later as well, if you're not watching this live, because this will be on Facebook and YouTube for eternity, you can always, if you've made it this far and you're still watching and you can't answer a question live, just email me any further questions or whatever, and we'll get it passed on to Bruce, or I can facilitate or answer any questions of my own. So hopefully, James, you can get a hold of me. I'll get you those records for your ancestor. Matt and Cynthia and Peggy and everybody else, thanks for watching tonight. And thank you, Bruce, for coming on. And hopefully, we can do this again next year. And this will have blown up and we'll have some more interesting stories to talk about.
I think we should. I really do.
Yeah. And if I can ever get good enough set up, maybe we can go out into the cemeteries and we can go into Snohomish Cemetery and do some of this stuff live. And you can contribute stories too, because I have mine that I like to tell, but I want to give other people the opportunity to talk about, their research and their veterans and their favorite stories and things in other places like Snohomish or Evergreen and Everett or whatever. So that would be awesome. If we can, you and Karen, we can go out and film something, or Cynthia, someday we can do a stream together live here, or we can do something in person in the cemetery. And you can tell those stories too. And everybody can help pitch in here with getting this history out.
Anybody wants to submit a bio,
give
me the name and I'll help you do it.
All right. Go. Yeah.
I'm not going to be able to write all of them.
For sure. All right. Well, once again, Bruce, thank you. And I'm sorry we couldn't have Karen on. Next time we will get her on because she's half of this whole project, and I'd like to get her voice in this discussion next time.
Very big half.
Yeah.
I'm surprised she wasn't here. I thought it was a done deal. So.
Yeah. Well, it happens. At least we got you on and we're able to do it. So we rescheduled a couple times to make it happen, but we did. So.
Okay. Thank you all.
All right, guys. Well, hey, thanks for watching again. I'm going to sign out here. Once again, Civil War Veterans Buried in Washington State is the website. The link is in the comments below. If you're watching me, you already know about Civil War Seattle and my website and all of that, so you know where to find me. And if you have any questions about any of this, reach out to either one of us, and we'll get you the information on your ancestor or whatever it is that you want to know. We will do our best to help you guys out. So, all right, everybody, thanks for watching. Have a good night, and we'll see you next time.